All right, back with another video in the series of how to improve your handwriting. This is going to be part 3, and this one is going to be all about legibility. And I wanted to I actually made this video because I came across this piece that was shared in our handwriting, reddit.com/r/handwriting. Great community of handwriting enthusiasts going on over there. This was shared by ET_in_Arcadia Ego. And you can see there's a note here that is ironically hard to read. Please try to write more legibly next time. I would say the same thing to the teacher who wrote that. And I think this person posted this on Reddit, and it got a ton of upvotes. People really liked it, which I thought was interesting. And I see why, and I'm going to talk about why I think people liked it, but then also why this criticism is still valid. This concern about legibility is still valid as well. So first, let's talk about why people liked this piece. And if you're looking at it kind of zoomed out like this, you're not trying to read each word. You're just looking at it as an overall piece. And when you're doing that, it looks great. It has a very beautiful overall aesthetic. It has, watch the last video I did, part 2, about consistency. There are some consistent elements here that create an overall aesthetic. And the two consistent elements that are really jumping out to me is the consistency of slant. And I think you can see that. This is a very slanted script. It's kind of its biggest advantage and disadvantage, I would say. And we'll get into the disadvantage later. But it's very slanted. And it's consistent. If I'm looking at this J and this F, I'm just seeing, even if I go to this I, these lines are all going in pretty much the same direction. It's not perfect, but it's very good. So I think that just having that consistency of slant, that just gives the overall look of this, just gives it a great look. And then the other element that is really driving this piece of penmanship is going to be the consistency of the style. So there's just a ton of stylistic elements in this writing. I think whoever wrote this clearly has learned, they've been looking at kind of older cursive styles, maybe looking at Spencerian handwriting, Palmer method, business penmanship stuff from the early 1900s, the late 1800s. They've been looking at those styles, and they've taken a bunch of elements, or they've even just taken the whole script as a whole, and they've been using them, and they've been using them well. So there's just a lot of, everything goes together. It's kind of, I want to point out some specific things that I'm seeing that'll make you see what I'm saying here. So first of all, if you look at all of their ascenders, they all have a loop. That's a basic thing. H's, L's, the F. Is there another F that I haven't drawn a line through? Yeah, here. They all have a loop. There's no, some scripts you'll see people looping their L's and not looping their L's, or looping their F's and not looping their B's. This has anywhere that there's a traditional ascender letter form, they're looping it. So that gives it a nice look. If we look at something like, even like this W, the entry on this W and the entry on this V, very similar entry. It's these little things that are consistent across the script. Little things like the N's. The N's are very similar to the M's. Again, another little thing that's just making this all come together. And, it's kind of hard to answering, why do these stylistic elements go together? It's a hard question to answer. It's, why is business penmanship, why was that the standard for years and years in America? Why did everybody see it as such a great hand? I don't know exactly why. It fits the eye, it fits our culture, and this piece has elements of that in it. And I think that's why a lot of people saw this on Reddit and they said, oh, I'm upvoting that. That looks beautiful. And the fact that somebody thought it was illegible is kind of ridiculous because it looks so good. So let's get into why somebody would consider this having issues with legibility. And I talked about slant as being a positive of this. It's also a negative. This is a very slanted script, and when you get into slanted scripts, letters start to get squished together. They're harder to read. Things like E's, if you look at this E, you can see how the loop it doesn't even really make a loop. Kind of the loop is filled in, which makes it to the I. In context, it's an E because it's in the word Jews. But out of context, into the brain that is trying to process these letters, it has to maybe think a little extra about what that actually is. And you can see, so when you make an E that's very slanted, it's more likely for you to close it like that. And then if I make an I, it's very similar. Now, if they use more vertical handwriting, it'd be much easier to make that loop and differentiate those two letters. See how that works? Little issues like that. That's where the slant just starts to cause problems. I think just overall, it's kind of hard to say exactly where it causes all the problems. That's one example. But you're going to have a lot of problems like that when you have a script that is too much slanted. So I would say pull up the slant a little bit. If we're on an angle like this with this script, it really just needs to come up 5 degrees. I don't know if that's really 5 degrees, but that's what I would say. This is at like a 48 degree slant. Bring it up to a 50, 55. Get it above 50 in terms of this slant here. All right, other issues. Some of the letter forms they're just using letter forms that are difficult to read, especially in the execution. If they were executed perfectly, they'd be easy to read, but they're not executed perfectly, and therefore they become hard to read. And this word occurrence is probably the biggest example of that problem happening in this script. So if you look at, especially this C and the E right here, that's a C, that's an E. Those look pretty much exactly the same. And what they're doing here, they're doing a great C. This is an old traditional C that goes up like this, comes down, okay? And then they're going into an E. Now, if you do it nice and big and you execute it well, I think it's pretty obvious that this is a C and this is an E. If this is in context, you'd be able to tell, all right, that's a C and that's an E. Some people still might not, though. So I would beware when you're dealing with people that haven't read a lot of cursive writing. Even if it's executed at this level, they still might not understand what it says. So then when you take something like this and then you don't execute it at this level, it starts to become somewhat illegible. So that's an issue here. You might just want to consider simplifying your letter forms into something that's a little more modern, a little more readable, if you're going for legibility. And that's a big if. Maybe you want to make something artistic, something beautiful that doesn't need to be read, but needs to be looked at, then don't worry about things like that. But if you're writing a paper for a teacher, you might want to worry about that. There's some other little elements here. Like this, here's another one. Same thing, chambers, R and S. Those R's and the S's look almost pretty much the same. I kind of wonder, I know there's other S's in this piece that look better, but, if they took a little more care to close this loop on the S, then you'd have some differentiation. And there's really no reason for an R to look like an S. An R has this open bottom and an S doesn't. Close that bottom up, and you'd be just fine. So, and there's a lot of little examples, again, like open tops, the A when you have an A with an open top, you know, it starts to look like a C and an I, or even maybe two I's, which in context, we all know this word says chambers, but you're making the reader do a little extra to figure out what you're trying to write. So, all right, I'm going to stop there because we're already at the 10-minute mark, and you don't need to hear me ramble any longer. But yeah, I just wanted to cover this issue of, you know, kind of beauty versus legibility. I think this is a beautiful hand, and it would become even more beautiful if the legibility was increased as well. But that's why you're going to see something like, you're going to see someone have a problem with reading this, while at the same time, when you and I look at it, we can appreciate the beauty of it. So, interesting little dynamic going on in that piece, and I just wanted to write about it, or do a video about it. If you liked the video, I'd love it if you hit the thumbs up button, liked it. That would help me out. And be sure to subscribe if you want to see when my next video is going to be released. If you want to, follow me on Instagram. I am at Perfect Biscuits. Come check me out over on Instagram. I post a lot of videos, business cursive, kind of traditional cursive stuff like this, and ornamental penmanship, which is kind of an even fancier version of this as well. And I love doing it. I'd love for you to follow me. So check me out, subscribe, like, all that stuff. Thanks for watching.